Hey guys, Jessica Ruppin and NBC Sports' Steve Letarte here for NASCAR Fantasy Fastlane. Steve, last week at Bristol, we saw Kyle Busch survive all of the elements that Mother Nature threw at him and got his second straight win of the season, but we've been concerned about him in terms of usage. So do you play him again at Richmond?
Well, the numbers as far as Richmond goes would be an absolute yes, but I have a usage issue. So Kyle Busch is going to go on the bench for a few races. I'm fortunate enough that I've got winning points out of him when he was in my lineup, so I feel good about Kyle Busch. The stats would say play him at Richmond, but usage would say otherwise.
So if you're not playing Kyle, who are you looking at?
Well, when I look at Richmond, to me, it's pretty obvious. My must-start starts with Joey Logano in the 22 team. You got to remember, a year ago, this is when it all came apart for Joey Logano. They won the race and then had a penalty. They could never figure out a way to kind of get back on track for the entire 2017 season. So I think Todd Gordon, Joey Logano are going to make it a point to run well this weekend. I think that's the only way to kind of bury the hatchet on what happened last year. And the other car that is a must-start for me, well, he's been around all of 2018. That's Kyle Larson, right? It's been Kyle, and Truex. Truex has run very well. Kevin Harvick was good early in the year. Kyle Larson's been at the front of all of these races. I think this is a breakthrough. He's run in the top two of the last 4 times at Richmond. I expect that same sort of consistency. So Joey Logano, Kyle Larson, they're my 2 cornerstones of my team this week.
So we're going to go right into 2 hot laps with Letarte.
All right, I'm ready.
It's Richmond,
I got my
it's a short
notes.
track. Denny Hamlin.
Denny Hamlin's a yes. The Virginia native runs really well to short tracks. I think Denny Hamlin's a solid start.
Martin Truex Jr.
Martin Truex Jr. is a solid no. He's been outside the top 30 in the last 2 races. He's too good at the mile and a half, so I can't run him in a short track.
Ryan Blaney.
Ryan Blaney, also a no. While I expect Penske to be up front, Ryan Blaney hasn't been inside the top 18 yet at Richmond. He's going to have to prove something before he can make my lineup.
Daniel Suarez.
Daniel Suarez, I actually think this is one of my sleeper picks. He's only has 2 starts there. Never great, but you're not looking for great out of a sleeper pick. Just some solid points. He's run well. Even with that thumb injury, I think he can make it happen.
So there are several variables heading into this race. You know, Richmond is back to a night race for the spring race, and you've also got a turn 1 repave. Do you think that's going to have any impact on the drivers?
The first time I saw the patch they put in a turn 1, I really think it's going to affect the cars. That's right at max braking into turn 1, a very difficult area on the racetrack anyway. It's going to be interesting to see who can adapt. Plus, you know the variable you didn't mention? A second short track in a row. I've always found that tempers seem to flare and then don't have time to settle when you go back-to-back short tracks.
Well, and they're tricky too. We know short tracks can be kind of unpredictable. There's a lot of unknowns with that. So with that in mind, you know, we saw some guys like Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Daniel Suarez, some guys we don't talk about as much, run really well last week at Bristol. But can you rely on numbers when it comes to a short track?
Well, there's one name that jumps out, and that's Aric Almirola. I remember that race where he had to run well to make the playoffs. He did it at Richmond in the 43 car. Now that he's driving the 10, I expect Stuart Haas to be fast again. So he's a name that you may have a little extra usage still available. You might want to look at Aric, but I'm going to pay attention to practice. Usually cars, even though it's a day practice for a night race, if they're good in practice, they seem to be good in the race.
Well, we'll see this weekend. Be sure you guys get your lineup set. It's a short week, so you don't want to miss it. And tune into the race on Saturday, 6:30 p.m. on Fox.